Tommy Jaggi of FanSided here with NFL expert Marcus Mosher after this week 6 around the NFL to talk about who is the best team. I mean, Marcus, we just saw some of the top teams in the league, the cream of the crop, just get knocked off by inferior opponents, if you will. And so we're going to discuss, has that changed? Has the narrative changed? Are we looking at a new crown champion at the top of the league? We're going to talk about who's the best in the AFC. We're going to talk about QB reclamation projects because for whatever reason, Marcus, that seems like it's the way to go right now. We're going to share some data on that in just a little bit. Stay with us for that. Marcus, what are your overall biggest takeaways from week 7 or week 6 here?
It's a bad week of football. I mean, it was just a lot of sloppy football around the league. A lot of the teams that we thought were going to be good this year or decent this year kind of laid an egg. Not a very crisp week of football. I think we can start with Buffalo. They struggled against Atlanta. I mean, Atlanta put up 21 points in the first half. Very well could have been 28 if Drake London was able to extend for the pylon. Philadelphia, in the first game of the week against the Giants, they looked off. And this happens, right? This happens across the league. We always get some of these wonky weeks. And I think week 6 was one of them.
Just some weird stuff going on. You mentioned the Bills game. I mean, that thing could have been a blowout had Drake London not stepped on the 2-yard line there right before halftime, but just not the outcomes that you would expect. I mean, the New York Giants, we'll talk about here in a little bit, blowing out the Eagles. I mean, it truly looks like, Marcus, this might be the most open that we've ever seen the top of the league, AFC, NFC right now. Is that a fair assumption where we're sitting right now?
We should explain why that's happening. So the AFC, at least over the last 3 or 4 years, has been the conference of quarterbacks, right? You've got Patrick Mahomes, Lamar Jackson, Josh Allen, Joe Burrow, Justin Herbert, CJ Stroud, and the list goes on and on. While the NFC has been the conference that has some of the better rosters, right? Well, in the AFC, you've had several quarterback injuries, Lamar and Burrow. So those teams are really struggling. We'll get to the Ravens here in a little bit. And even teams like Buffalo, you're seeing a roster that is drafted or a team that is drafted very poorly 3-4 years in a row. You're starting to see the effects of that. Whereas in the NFC, you get some of these really good rosters, but now they're starting to fall apart, whether it's like Tampa Bay and all of the injuries they've had. The 49ers, I've never seen a team more banged up than what the 49ers are after 6 games. And it just creates a lot of parity across the league. I know some people really like that, where it's an any given Sunday league, but there's also part of it where we want to know who the good teams are and who the bad teams are. I think we know who the bad teams are. I don't think those ones are hard to find. We're just not sure if there's any good teams right now.
Yeah, there are some atrocious teams sitting at the bottom of the league, mostly in the AFC outside of New Orleans Saints. But let's talk about some of the teams at the top, maybe the potential team at the top, at least of the AFC. And I want to get your opinion on this, Marcus. The Kansas City Chiefs started off really rough, 2 straight losses to begin the season. Boy, were they dealt a difficult hand early on against the Chargers, the Eagles. They played the Ravens, the Lions so far. So the vast majority of the bulk of their hardest part of their schedule already out of the way. Now they're coming off of a 30-17 point win over the Lions. They blew out the Ravens 2 weeks ago, which isn't surprising at this point, but that was at least back when they looked a little bit better. Had Lamar. Where are where are the Chiefs right now in the AFC? They're just sitting on like a 500 record here, but are they the best team in the conference still, even with that?
Maybe, but I don't think this is a super scary team either. We need to put the Lions win into context, right? Yes, they got a home win against the Lions, which is, again, very impressive. The Lions were without 5 of their top 6 cornerbacks in this game, including their top 3 guys. And it's just really hard to win in the NFL when you don't have all those cornerbacks, especially against a team with Patrick Mahomes and Andy Reid. You've got 2 safeties that were questionable to even play in this game. Neither of them looked healthy. I think the Chiefs' offense is starting to get better. Now that Rashee Rice is back, they finally get their number 1 receiver. And I think the things are starting to turn for them on offense. I still think this defense can't generate a pass rush without blitzing. The linebackers could be exposed. But if you're saying that the Chiefs aren't the best team in the AFC, you got to make a case for somebody else. And I have a really hard time doing that as well for any other team outside of maybe Buffalo. But as we just mentioned, like Buffalo went into Atlanta and got the doors blown off of them. So it's really tough right now.
Yeah, I mean, we're still talking about a team that is spearheaded by Andy Reid, Patrick Mahomes. And that combination alone throughout the years has been good enough to get them to where they need to go. Can it be the case again this year, even with their slow start? They're getting Rashee Rice back. They're starting to pick things up on offense. Patrick Mahomes has been playing some good football as of late, and he kind of went like a year and a half there where it was so-so. I think that it's fair to put them in that conversation, at least with the way things are going. And like we said, it's so wide open right now, Marcus. And so I want to pose the next question to you is, who is the best team in the NFL? Our big topic. Who is the best team in the league? And where you and I stood on this when we did our power rankings right before week 1, we both would agree that the Eagles, the Packers, like those are they're the roster talent from top to bottom. They had everything you need. And we look at these teams recently. I mean, the Packers lost to the Browns 2 weeks ago. They tied to the Cowboys. Then the Eagles just got blown out by the divisional opponent in the New York Giants. Not quite the same dominant performances that we thought we would be getting at this stage of the season. Is there a new team that you would put atop the league right now? And I'll give you my thoughts.
I still think it's the Eagles and Packers. I mean, I wouldn't change based off of 1 or 2 games in, late September, early October. The Packers took care of business against a Bengals team this week. I know it wasn't pretty, but they got the win. And for the Eagles, that was a tough loss to the Giants, but it is a divisional game on a short week. If we've learned anything through these Thursday night games over the last 20 years, is do not overreact to divisional games on short weeks. That's how we make the biggest mistakes. Does Philadelphia have problems? Absolutely. I think the passing game is really wonky right now. The run game is nowhere near as good as it was last year. Jalen Carter didn't play on Thursday. We know how important he is to their defense. But again, I just don't think anybody has as complete of teams as what the Packers and the Eagles have. And as I've been saying all year, I'll be shocked if it's not one of those 2 teams representing the NFC. I think the only other team that could potentially do it is Detroit, but they've got so many injuries once again on defense that maybe that's going to hold them back.
Yeah, Marcus, I would agree with you that the rosters, at least on paper, they don't have the holes like some of the other teams do around the league. But these 2 teams have some fatal flaws, I feel like, early in the season. You might disagree with me on this, but the Eagles, apart from this past game, finally got the passing game going a little bit, have not been able to pass the football. They were averaging like 148 passing yards a game up until that point. A.J. Brown was disgruntled because of it. I mean, they're narrowly squeaking by some of these, and I think that that's the biggest issue with them. Can they get the passing game going enough? Because the running game isn't what it was last year. And then the Packers, Marcus, they're just so high variance. They are so high variance. They lost a game to the Browns where they scored 10 points. They tied a game to Dallas where they allowed 40 points. Like, what is this team? Where is their identity? Because they've had some struggles on defense. They've had struggles on offense. And they're kind of like a roller coaster. They just can't seem to be stable in their performances.
I think for Green Bay, they're playing much better defense than anybody realizes. They had that one game against Dallas in Dallas. That was a highly emotional game. And that Dak just went nuclear. Like, you're just not going to have very many games where you're playing a quarterback that's on par with Dak Prescott and that Cowboys offense right now. Outside of that game, they've been pretty dominant, and they haven't had a lot of luck on defense yet. Like, they haven't forced a fumble. They haven't recovered a fumble yet. And some of that stuff is just so fluky. And once that turns for them, I think you're going to really see this defense taking off. I just think this Packers team is built for like November, December, January football. And the fact that they only have one loss now, through first 6 weeks of the season, I think they're going to be okay.
Yeah, I don't necessarily disagree with you on the strength of those teams. Have they played that way? I don't think so far. But allow me to throw a few other teams out there, teams that I did not think we would be talking about a third of the way through the 2025 season. And I'll give you one from each conference. The Seattle Seahawks, in the NFC and the Indianapolis Colts in the AFC. The Seahawks, Sam Darnold is playing at the top of his game. I mean, in terms of an efficiency standpoint, 9+ yards an attempt, like he has been outstanding. Mike McDonald, what he's done to that defense, incredible. Jaxson Smith-Njigba on pace to be like the number one receiver in the league this year, statistically speaking, and efficiency-wise has been absolutely awesome. They don't have the high-profile names that the Eagles or the Packers do, but they've been incredible. The Seahawks are number one in DVOA at positive 44.2%. That is factors above the team like the Eagles down at 2.3% positive DVOA. It's one statistic, but you look at point differential, it's still excellent there. Colts are the same way. I mean, Colts lead the league in point differential plus 78. They're second in the NFL in DVOA at positive 33.6%. Are we reading too much into these analytics, Marcus? Because historically, point differential, DVOA, those have been two very good predictors of which teams are actually contenders in the NFL.
Let's start with the Colts, because I think the Colts are a good team, but they're not as good as what their record indicates. And you go through their schedule. They blew out Miami in week 1. They should have lost to Denver in week 2 if it wasn't for that leverage call on the field goal. They beat the Titans. They lost to the Rams. And again, that was a game that they played well against the Rams, so give them credit for that one. They beat the Raiders and they beat the Cardinals without Kyler Murray, without James Conner, without Trey Benson, and with Marvin Harrison Jr. getting hurt in the first quarter. So we should put that in context a little bit.
Sure.
I think Seattle is for real. And I think a big reason why is this passing game. Sam Darnold continues to play some of the best football of his career. He's back with Clint Kubiak, who he was with the 49ers. He just seems so much more confident than ever before. And then you've got Jaxson Smith-Njigba, who knew the receiver that produced the most yards and touchdowns with Marvin Harrison Jr., Chris Olave, and Garrett Wilson, and Emeka Buka on the same roster was going to be good in the NFL. It's surprising how that happened. Plus, that defense, despite all of their injuries, continues to play at a really high level. I think Seattle is an awesome team. We'll see if they win the division, because the 49ers and the Rams are very good. But that's the look of a team that you do not want to face in the postseason at all, because they can run the ball, they can create chunk plays in the passing game, and they can really get after you on defense.
Yeah, I mean, they're just doing everything right now. And going back to the Colts for a second here, Marcus, I know that their schedule hasn't exactly been daunting, but you are plus 78 in the turnover or the point differential. You are number 2 in DVOA. You are blowing teams out of the water, which the Shane Steichen offense is capable of doing. And they could potentially, you talked about the Denver game, they could be 5-0 right now. If A.D. Mitchell does not have a boneheaded 65-yard play, fumble the ball at the back of the end zone against the LA Rams, they could be the only undefeated team in the league right now still. Again, only a couple of tough opponents that they've played so far, but I don't think we can rule them out. And that's why I go back to that conversation with the AFC. I think they're in the conversation with the NFL right now because it's so wide open. What metric, Marcus, if we're, and we can talk about the rosters all day long with the Eagles and Packers, but what metric is showing that these are elite football teams right now?
Well, for the Colts, I mean, they're just not turning the ball over. They're running the ball really well, and Daniel Jones is creating a bunch of big plays in the passing game. I think there are reasons to be excited about the Colts. However, let's wait a little bit. They've got a tough schedule coming up. They play the Chargers this week. Then they've got the Titans, who we'll get to. And then it's Steelers, Falcons, Chiefs, Texans, Jags, Seahawks, 49ers. Like, we're going to learn a lot about this Colts team, and I do think they're going to be a playoff team. I think they're probably going to win this AFC South. I still have a hard time thinking this is a championship caliber team, though. I think they've got too many issues on both sides of the ball. I think the pass defense still really concerns me. I mean, Jacoby Brissett moved the ball up and down the field. And let's see what Daniel Jones looks like against some better opponents.
Hey, Marcus, are there teams that we're not mentioning too at the top of the league right here? The Tampa Bay Buccaneers, the Detroit Lions, who, by the way, their only 2 losses have come against the Packers in week 1 and then this past week against the Chiefs. I mean, the Bucs have the best record in the NFL, tied with the Colts at 5-1. Baker Mayfield is a season ended right now. He's the MVP. I mean, I think he's the MVP if the season ended today. We had that conversation last week. He did nothing but expand on that. in week 6 with another phenomenal performance. I mean, he is about to have a incredible season at this rate. Is it fair to include those two teams in the discussion as well?
Yeah, absolutely. When you get a quarterback playing as well as Baker, you're always in the hunt. So yeah, absolutely. They're going to win their division. They're going to host a home playoff game, and it's hard to play in Tampa Bay. So I'm with you there. And for the Lions, I think you can make a case that the Lions are actually the best team in the NFL, but they're so banged up, and I don't know if they're going to get some of these guys back on defense. And that's always a big concern.
Mhm.
Plus, Jared Goff has not been the best quarterback in the playoffs. He's got some issues when you go against pressure. But from a roster construction, by talent, by coaching, they're absolutely right there. So think about all the teams that we've mentioned in the show: the Packers, the Eagles, the Lions, the Bucs, the Seahawks. We haven't even mentioned the Rams, who, they were just a game away from, closing out the 49ers last week, who they would be, I think, 5-1 at this stretch. The NFC is going to be a gauntlet, and it's going to be tough for any team to come out of that conference. And I wouldn't be surprised if we get a team like the Seahawks or the Bucs end up representing the conference. But man, it's a pretty loaded conference from top to bottom.
Yeah, there's no question about it right now. And I think just the scope of the playoff race, I mean, if all things kind of remain the same until we get to the postseason, be really interested in those NFC matchups, even in the wild card round, because you can get some crazy stuff happening. Marcus, let's move on from this discussion. Let's talk about the recent firing. In the Tennessee Titans were the first to jump ship. They are making coaching changes. Brian Callahan is out. His father, Bill, walked out the door with him, the offensive line coach there. This is not unusual to see. It's happening pretty early in the season. We saw this with Robert Saleh just recently. Were the Titans right by doing this? Did this change need to come? And then who could be next in line to lose their head coaching position?
Yeah, I mean, Jeffrey Simmons basically said it after the game on Sunday that after a big win against the Cardinals, there was just no juice at practice. And a lot of times that comes from your head coach. This team was not getting better. They were progressively getting worse. They had a dumb win over the Cardinals last week. And it shouldn't be all that surprising because they've invested a lot of money into the offense, and the offense has gotten worse. Bill Callahan, the offensive line coach, he was dismissed as well. He was a big reason that they went out and signed Dan Moore and they drafted J.C. Latham. Neither of those have worked out particularly well so far. Maybe the guy that was just along for the ride in Cincinnati coaching Joe Burrow, maybe he's not really that great of a coach. That's how Brian Callahan got this job. I think it was the right move. I think they needed to make a change. And I'm going to be fascinated to see what the Titans do next. Do they go for a new offensive-minded coach like Callahan? Do they go like for a Lincoln Riley or a Lane Kiffin? Or do they go for someone like Arthur Smith, who's been mentioned coming back to Tennessee to coaching now? Or do they go with a more seasoned guy like Mike McCarthy, who's been rumored to be kind of in the discussion here? I'm fascinated by what Tennessee does with their next coaching hire.
Yeah, it's hard to blame them. And if you don't have the locker room, what do you have? And so, if a team like the Titans, Marcus, they just had the number 1 overall pick. They used it on a quarterback. There's no incentive to tank. Now you want to start building some momentum. You've got the quarterback in place. Start winning football games. If your locker room is not behind you, your players are not behind you, you don't have much going for you. I understand why they made the change. You pointed to some of those candidates. I think that they're very interesting, Marcus. And for those listening, just walk us through how that works. It's okay for the Titans to go out and poach another team's coordinator midseason?
No, they can't do it mid-season, but these are guys that have been kind of rumored to be part of the discussion once the season is over. They're going to ride with Mike McCoy, the former Chargers head coach, for the remainder of the season. And I think they just wanted to get a jump on things, right? Like as soon as the year ends, they're going to start looking at some candidates. Could even someone like Bill Belichick be an option? I have my doubts, but he's one of the favorites right now for the job. The Titans have to get somebody, in my opinion, who's respected on offense, who can get this offense back to at least a adequate level, because Callahan was not doing that in the slightest. This was a team that was getting worse every week, and that's a pretty clear indicator that you do not have a good head coach.
Now let's talk about, Marcus, who could be next here. We mentioned the New York Jets kind of going through the same thing last year, firing Robert Saleh. They have an interim head coach remainder of the season. Things do not go well. In fact, they get worse. The defense gets substantially worse from there. Then they go out and hire Aaron Glenn. So let's bring his name up again. The Jets are 0-6. Aaron Glenn is a first-year NFL head coach. Is it too early to begin that conversation? I think we mentioned him on last week's show, but man, things are just getting worse in New York. That's a really, really quick turnaround. You say you get 6 games as a head coach. I mean, typically you give guys several years. The Saints are obviously a bad team, but I don't think that Kellen Moore's going anywhere. So which team, which coach out there is it fair to say this guy is next and a firing could happen in season?
Well, I think you identified the right ones, right? I think if you're 0-6 with the Jets and the defense continues to be an issue, not this week against Denver, but in general, the passing game is getting worse. We'll talk about Fields. And then I also don't think it helps if you're a jerk to the media, and that's what Aaron Glenn has been so far. You can't be a bad coach and a jerk to the media. It just doesn't really work that way. You've got to have some skins on the wall first, and that's not been Aaron Glenn. Now, I don't think the Jets want to be a team that's firing head coaches every other year, but generally, right away whether you have a bad coach. You might not know if you've got a good coach, but most of the time if you have a bad coach. And I would say right now, Aaron Glenn is a bad coach, right? Yeah, the defense isn't improving, and that's where his specialty is. But you also don't want to shortchange a rebuild. And I think everybody knows that this was going to be a rebuild when they hired him. They wanted to give him, some rope here so that he could try to build this thing back up. But there's got to be some signs of encouragement, and we haven't had them at all so far.
Marcus, I'll throw another name out there as well. Zach Taylor, maybe another coach that's kind of been riding the coattails of Joe Burrow for a little bit here. The Bengals are minus 80 in point differential at rock bottom of the NFL. Is it fair to list Taylor as a candidate when he doesn't have his franchise quarterback playing?
No, yes, it's fair because this was a team that didn't make the playoffs last year, right? They really struggled. The offense, again, he is an offensive-minded head coach, and the offense continues to be abysmal despite having 2 really good receivers. I think the only reason why I don't think he's going to get fired in season is Mike Brown, the Bengals owner, doesn't want to spend money on a coach that's not going to coach, right? So it doesn't seem like that's something that would happen in season. Would I be shocked if he's fired after the year? Absolutely not. But I don't think he's the guy that gets fired. I think the other name we should mention is Mike McDaniel with the Dolphins. Mm-hmm. He's got a really tough hand here because the defense is so bad, and he's trying his best to get this offense to be functional. But I think McDaniel is probably the next guy out.
There's a few more that I want to mention, Mark, so we can keep this conversation going, but the Cleveland Browns, Kevin Stefanski. I mean, he in his rookie quarterback, Dylan Gabriel, just played his second ever NFL game. He passed the ball 52 times with 57 dropbacks. I mean, you talk about setting up a rookie for disaster. And when you get behind in a game, I understand that you have to try certain things. The Browns are 1-5. They can't score points. Is Stefanski? I think that Stefanski is a fairly good head coach, but is he on the bubble?
No, I don't think so. Because Andrew Berry and Kevin Stefanski knew when they're going into the season with Joe Flacco and Dylan Gabriel and Shedeur Sanders as their quarterbacks, it was probably going to be a struggle. This is a rebuild for them. I don't think anything that happens this year is going to cost Stefanski his job. They've got the worst offensive tackle pairing out there on the field right now that's dealing with injuries. I think this is just a transition year. They're going to be aggressive getting their quarterback next year, and they're trying to figure out this year between Dylan Gabriel and Shedeur Sanders who can be a long-term viable backup. But neither of those guys are options to be a franchise quarterback long-term. So, no, I don't think Stefanski's going to be gone.
All right, Marcus, and 2 more for you. High-profile head coaches, John Harbaugh of the Ravens, Pete Carroll of the Raiders. The Ravens are 1-5. The Raiders are 2-4. Have things just gotten stale with these guys at this point? And can you see not a coaching fire, I would say, and I think that's what we're mainly talking about here, but just moving on at the end of the season?
I think of the two, the one that makes the most sense is John Harbaugh to me, because he's already, he's getting up there in age. I think he just turned 63, if I'm not mistaken. This is not a particularly well coached team on either side of the ball. I don't think they would fire him. He's next door neighbors with Eric DaCosta, the Ravens GM, so that would be kind of awkward.
That'd be
I
awkward.
wouldn't be surprised if Harbaugh eventually makes his way to like the front office and he's more of an
Mhm.
advisor. But yeah, I do think it's time for the Ravens to move on from Harbaugh. This is not a well coached team. There's nothing they do particularly well right now. You're seeing how much Lamar Jackson covers the flaws of this team. I think it's time for them to make a move.
All right, Marcus, we talked about Aaron Glenn and the New York Jets already. I want to talk about their quarterback situation because, boy, this is bad. This is really, really bad. When Justin Fields, I'm a Steelers fan, obviously. When Justin Fields was on Pittsburgh last year, there were questions whether they were making the right move, benching him 6 weeks into the season. I think we got our answer now. And to put this into context, how bad this game was against the Denver Broncos, the Jets were home for that early slate game. Justin Fields had minus 10 net passing yards. So after taking 55 sack yards, taking 9 sacks in this game, Marcus, and only for 55 yards, only passing for 45, he netted 10 yards in the passing game on 17 attempts. With all that was going on and with how well the Jets defense played, New York still had a chance to win this abysmal game with a field goal right at the end. And they just couldn't do it because Justin Fields could not pass the ball. They ended up losing 11-13. They were aided by a great kick return in this game. They were aided by a safety. None of that helps. None of that helped Jets snap their losing streak. They're 0-6, 0-5 now with Justin Fields. Tyrod Taylor had to play a game in there. Is it time to turn the page and just move on?
Maybe. And honestly, this is what Fields has done the last couple of years. You look back at like his numbers last year with the Steelers in the first 6 games of the year before getting benched. He had a 93 passer rating, 5 touchdowns, 1 interception. I think he had 10 total touchdowns during that stretch. Well, if you look at Fields' numbers this year, 4 touchdowns, 0 interceptions, a 94 passer rating. The yards per attempt are about the same. He's giving you a lot of production on the ground. And if you look at the stats, you could probably talk yourself into, oh, he's okay, he's fine. And then you actually watch these games and you realize you can't run a functional offense with him.
Mm-hmm.
And this is why wide receivers don't want to play with Justin Fields, because he doesn't deliver the ball on time and with any kind of accuracy, and everything turns into a backyard football play. And you just can't be functional and consistent with Fields as your starting quarterback. And once you start to lose games, or once your offense starts to really struggle to put up points, that's how you lose the locker room. So is Tyrod Taylor a better option? Probably not. Is he the long-term option? Certainly not. But he's a better passer. And that's ultimately what matters here when it comes to the Jets. I think with Garrett Wilson, who's now dealing with an injury, with Mason Taylor, you want to develop these young guys, and Fields isn't helping you do that, and he's certainly not helping you win games.
Yeah, we've had this conversation before when talking about the Colts and Anthony Richardson not being able to help the Colts have a functioning offense, not being able to help with the wide receiver development over there. Feels very similar with Justin Fields, Marcus, and you nailed it. You talk about box score checking and how Fields could still pass as a respectable quarterback, at least a game managing quarterback who's taking care of the football. What's so baffling is that the offense can be playing as abysmal as they are without him even throwing so much as an interception through a third of the way through the season. He had a 9 QBR in this game. I mean, you just can't run an offense with a quarterback who can't pass the football. And it's really as simple as that. I mean, I was holding out hope as of last year for Justin Fields, but man, you're in year 5. You don't have it by now. You're not going to get it. And you're right. Tyrod Taylor is a better passer of the football. And I don't think that he's elite at it, but What other options do you have at this point? I think though, Marcus, the only thing you can say is, yeah, maybe, I don't know, if the Jets keep going this way, maybe the end game here is to say, we're just going to wind up with the top pick in the draft and we'll get our guy.
Well, you're probably going to do that with Tyrod Taylor anyway, so I wouldn't worry about that. It's not like Tyrod's going to come in here. And
well, I mean, there's the Saints and there's a few other teams that are going to give him a run for their money.
Right. But I just don't think going from Fields to Tyrod suddenly going to give them 5 extra wins or anything like that. But I think it's over for Fields. I think what he needs to be is a backup quarterback that can come in for a game, 2 games, lean on his legs. He's going to take a bunch of sacks. He's not going to throw the ball in harm's way. Like, he's not going to throw a bunch of interceptions, but you just can't have a functional passing attack. And unfortunately, that's what matters at quarterback, and he can't do it. So we're getting real close for it to be being over with Justin Fields.
All right, Marcus, let's move on. Talk about the Baltimore Ravens and just their utter collapse this season. Obviously, you're not going to perform well if you don't have Lamar Jackson, but the defense has been terrible. I mean, they finally stepped up a little bit against the Rams. It wasn't quite as awful as it's been the first 5 weeks of the season. Still really bad. They're just a bad football team. Last week, Marcus, I threw that number out there. They had historically speaking, a 5.9% chance of making it to the playoffs after a 1-4 start. Now that you are 1-5, you are doomed. I mean, historically, it just doesn't happen. And so, although technically not eliminated, the Ravens could go and win out. There are definitely avenues they could make the playoffs. They could maybe lose 2 more times and still make the playoffs. But historically speaking, they're eliminated, right?
I mean, yeah, probably. It also, you can watch this team and just see that they're not very good. I mean, without Lamar Jackson, they can't run the ball. They can't stop the run. Their pass defense is atrocious. They traded away arguably their best pass rusher and Odafe Owe this week. And I think that kind of signals a soft tank here. Like, hey, let's shed some salary, get some draft picks back, get a safety that can help us a little bit. I mean, their schedule opens up. We should mention that their toughest game remaining is the Packers, and that's in week 17, and that's in Green Bay. They play the Patriots, they play the Bengals twice, they play the Jets, they play the Browns. They still have 2 games with the Steelers. So, I mean, I wouldn't be surprised if we get to a point where they're like 7-7 and they're not officially eliminated. But this isn't a good team. And if you're a contender in the AFC, I wouldn't even think twice about the Ravens being a factor moving forward.
Yeah, I mean, I would not be surprised at all if they scratched and clawed their way back to a 9-8 season. I ultimately think that they fall short. They're end up being a team maybe at best that's on the bubble after week 17. But yeah, I mean, just
can we talk about that AFC North real quick? Since September 23rd, Pittsburgh is 2-0, and the rest of the division is 0-10. I mean, this is easily the worst division in the NFL right now.
Which, again, we wouldn't have been saying that, I don't think, had Lamar and Burrow not had significant injuries. The defense would have been bad no matter what. There's no escaping that. But two of the 4 best quarterbacks in the league, you go down with injuries, that kind of stuff's going to happen. That interdivisional trade, super weird. You don't see that very often. I don't think, I mean, obviously the Browns are not threatened by Flacco. They've got a different agenda. They know that this is not their year. Mike Tomlin kind of took offense to it. Just kind of a weird situation all around. Marcus
Tomlin was just bummed that he didn't get to play Jake Browning. Let's call it what it was.
100%.
He really was excited about
the Steelers are 11-11 all time against Joe Flacco, and so that's
what it is.
50-50 chance. They lost to Flacco just last year when he was on the Colts, and so Tomlin was fuming a little bit after that Andrew Berry move there. But just a sidebar there, Marcus. Let's talk about the New York Giants. We talked about just how they upset the Eagles. We didn't really get into the fashion in which they did that. This 2025 Giants draft class looks awesome already. And I don't want to count my chickens before they hatch here, but Jaxson Dart, is he that guy? Seems to have an it factor in his game. Cam Scatterbo, top 5 running back in the NFL right now, at least in terms of efficiency, and he will run you over. Obviously, you have Abdul Carter. It's going to be a phenomenal draft pick. I mean, are they contenders already? I've got my answer, and it's no. Because 2 weeks ago, they lost to the Saints, Marcus, in a sloppy, awful looking game. But then you go and beat the Eagles. And the week before that, you have a really good game. They're not there yet, but I think they could be soon.
Yeah, they're not there yet, but they're going to be a tough out every single week. Last year you faced the Giants and you just go ahead and mark a win on your schedule. Don't even think twice about it. That's not going to be the case this year. Like, whoever they play every week, they're going to get after you because they've got an awesome pass rush. Brian Burns is playing probably the best football of his career. They've got Dexter Lawrence up front, who is nearly unblockable. Abdul Carter's playing well, but he hasn't even hit that level that we all expect yet. They are going to be an annoying team, right? From like a real life NFL purposes, you just can never count them out. I'm excited to see Jaxson Dart and Cam Scatterbo. It gives this Giants team some energy and honestly an edge that they just haven't had in a long time. And that's what the Giants needed. And they're one of the more fun teams in the NFL to watch right now.
Yeah, I mean, I was excited about Jaxson Dart when I watched him play. I did not expect him to turn around from a Lane Kiffin offense to what he's been doing this quickly. And again, we'll see if he's the real deal. But I've been impressed with that draft class so far. I've been impressed with the QB move. And oddly enough, Marcus, you go from Daniel Jones and you move away from him and in just a cluster of quarterbacks that have played last year, and you go from that to Russell Wilson, who was obviously not good, only had the one good game against Dallas, got benched. And then Jaxson Dart looks like a quarterback. But let's talk about Daniel Jones. Let's talk about some reclamation quarterbacks here. I'm just dumbfounded by what's been happening around the league these past 2, maybe 3 years now. We talk about Baker Mayfield, Daniel Jones now with the Colts, Sam Darnold now doing it twice in a row with 2 different teams, Minnesota Vikings last year, and now the Seattle Seahawks. Are the reclamation QBs the way to go? I can tell you what, you can save a crap ton of money because I mean, you look at the average annual earnings of those 3 quarterbacks I just mentioned. Sam Darnold is 18th in the league. Who was the next one I said? Baker Mayfield 19th and Daniel Jones 21st. And to put some further perspective on that, Daniel Jones's $14 million a year contract is a fraction of what the Jaguars are paying, $55 million a year for Trevor Lawrence. What the Dolphins are paying, $53 million a year for Tua. What the 49ers are paying, $53 million a year for Brock Purdy. I mean, the savings is phenomenal, but it's not just the savings, it's the success that we've seen. I mean, Darnold led the Vikings to a 14-win season just last year. He's on pace to have another incredible year. Daniel Jones is looking good. Baker Mayfield's looking like the MVP. Is this suddenly the way to go, Marcus?
It's not a bad idea. Like one of the things that you mentioned, all these quarterbacks that have really broken out, Baker, Darnold, Daniel Jones, these were all very highly drafted, talented quarterbacks. I think Daniel Jones was the 6th overall pick, Sam Darnold was the 3rd, and Baker Mayfield was obviously the 1st. So it's not like you're getting guys that are limited like athletically. So I do think this is a good strategy, but the more fascinating thing for me is what do you do after they have the breakout season? For like the case of Daniel Jones, right? He's a free agent after this year. Do you pay him Brock Purdy money and give him $54 million a year? If you're the Colts, he's been the best quarterback that you've had in the post Andrew Luck era. Do you give him that contract or you try to find somebody else? Because everybody else that's kind of come through that building has not worked out.
And that is something that you and I have talked about and even joked about before is like, all right, at what point is the cutoff? Like, when can you say, I just can't do this? I can't pay Tua or I can't pay Brock Purdy or whoever it is. Where's that cutoff line? Because maybe Daniel Jones is that guy where it's like, you're going to dupe me into this, aren't you? But are we better off just trying to stream this and do it again? Like, I don't know. But it is interesting, though, to say the least, that, I mean, you could argue all 3 of those guys we just mentioned there, Sam Darnold, Baker Mayfield, Daniel Jones, 3 of the top 8-ish quarterbacks in the NFL this year.
Well, and I can tell you for Baker, like, I'm not going to break any news here, but Baker Mayfield's going to be the highest paid quarterback in the NFL.
And he should be after this.
Yeah. So he's probably going to get 61, 62 million a year. And Baker's playing unbelievable. He gives you a very high floor. At the same time, you've seen what happened with some of these other teams like the Cowboys, the Bengals, even the Dolphins, where you're paying these guys 55, 56 million a year. Now it's really going to prohibit the team that you can put around Baker. So I think Tampa Bay should do it because he gives you such a high floor. But now your drafts become incredibly important. And that's why it was so vital that the Buccaneers start hitting on their picks. And when you hit on someone like Emeka Egbuka, now you can move on from Mike Evans. You can move on from Chris Godwin and not have any drop off at receiver and save all this money so you can afford Baker Mayfield. Tampa Bay's doing it the right way. I'm curious to see what the Colts do here, what the Seahawks do with Sam Darnold, because Darnold signed a relatively short deal as well. It's going to be fascinating.
Yeah, it certainly will. And it's hard to believe that it was just a few years ago that Sam Darnold and Baker Mayfield were on a dumpster fire Carolina Panthers team fighting for scraps against each other. And look at them now. Both of those guys are killing it right now in the
Hey,
NFL.
maybe that's a sign that the Panthers shouldn't move on from Bryce Young because he's going to go somewhere else and become an MVP candidate. So don't move on.
I'm not buying that one, but you never know. I mean, it's
Well,
happened
think about
twice
it.
already.
Baker Mayfield was playing scout team defensive end for them. It got so bad that when he was released by the Panthers, everybody thought that was a good move to give the reins over to Sam Darnold. Don't underestimate a franchise's ability to nuke a player's value.
Yeah, no, it's true. I mean, we've seen it, and that's the perfect example. Marcus, let's real quickly here. I want to talk about which AFC team do you trust more? Not necessarily which is the better team. I think for sure the Colts are the better team right now, but Colts or Steelers, who do you trust more? And for me, Marcus, as a Steelers fan, it pains me to say that I still probably trust the Colts, even though, I mean, out of 5 bad years of Daniel Jones, we have now seen a really good stretch. Maybe that's just enough, though. They've just been the better team so far. I don't know if I trust the Steelers to put it all together. Who do you trust more?
Pittsburgh, because of their defense. I don't trust this Colts secondary at all. When Jacoby Brissett can carve you up with no weapons, I think Pittsburgh's game is built a little bit more for playing outdoors and playing against some of these better teams. They've got a pass rush. They can stop the run. They figured out that part of it a little bit. Do I think either of these teams should be like the number 1 or number 2 seed in the AFC? Probably not, but they probably will be just because of the schedules that they got coming up.
Man, the Steelers do have a better defense. There's no question about that. But the Colts have shown that they are capable of blowing teams out. Shane Steichen's offense can blow teams out, something the Steelers have not shown that they can do. That's where I would draw the line right there. All the metrics would say Colts right now. All the metrics would say Colts in terms of point differential, DVOA, offensive efficiency. The Steelers have them on defense, at least in recent games. And I've been a lot more optimistic about Pittsburgh over the last 2 weeks than I did the first 3 weeks. First 3 weeks, 100% pretenders. I mean, not even a question. These last 2 weeks, maybe there's something there. Maybe there's something there. The defense is playing at the top of its game right now, albeit against a rookie quarterback that you're coming off of. I'm interested to see how things kind of transpire from here with these two teams because, I mean, Marcus, ironically, what year is it? Like Colts and Steelers are the 2 top teams in the AFC right now, and I don't think anybody had that on their bingo card.
No, it's what a wonky AFC year, which probably just means we'll get the Chiefs in the championship game once again.
Probably. All right, we go live on this show, is Stacking the Box No Huddle show, every single Tuesday at 2 p.m. Eastern time. You can follow Marcus on X at Marcus_Mosher. You can follow me on X at Tommy Jaggi. You can download the Stacking the Box podcast wherever you get your podcasts. Also check us out on YouTube. You can follow my written content on stillcurtain.com. You can follow Marcus's written content on the FanSided NFL Network. Be sure to check out fansided.com for all your daily sports news and opinions. Thanks again for listening to Stacking the Box.